Okay. I do love sticky notes. Okay, we are now being recorded, just so everyone knows. I really wanted to try to capture this evening's meeting for any folks who are unable to join us. Once again, second meeting is on Monday at noon. Third meeting is on Thursday, the 20th at 3. We determined we should do different times of the day so that folks who have different work hours would be able to participate in one of the live meetings, but they will all be recorded and posted. So back to where I started. Last night at the Board of Education meeting, I presented an overview to the Board of Education. We presently have 70 people in tonight's meeting. We did not have, we had a smaller bunch of folks turned out for the Board of Ed meeting. But the board asked some questions which extremely mimicked the types of emails that the leadership team has been reading over the last week. And the leadership team is already starting on the draft of the newest version of our Reopen GCS plan, which will be posted publicly tomorrow. The plan looks like this. It is on our website. It has already been updated twice. And every time it's updated, for your convenience, so that you don't have to go through and read the entire thing again, each update will include on the table of contents page, highlighted in yellow, it will indicate that that is a section that contains an update. We're trying to make it easy for you to follow our updates, yet the document is already quite large. On Friday, tomorrow, several things are due to be posted. Probably the most significant item that's going to be posted are the plans that we have partnered, excuse me a minute while I let folks in. The plans that have been created through a partnership between the Columbia County School Districts and the Columbia County Department of Health. Many of your questions were in that area. Any question about COVID-19 testing, any question that had to do with quarantine, question about protocols regarding illness. All of those questions were required to be created through a partnership with the Department of Health. School nurses were in that partnership and have been meeting also. Superintendents have been meeting. And as you can imagine, with the deadline being tomorrow for posting of those plans, we have met more this week than any week this summer. So the other things you're going to see tomorrow is a new update of our actual plan. And it will contain some significant updates that I would like to describe at the beginning of this meeting, because so many of your questions will be referred to in these changes. After reading all your questions and meeting with staff, and we have met with staff far more than Governor Cuomo has asked for. He asked for one staff meeting. We had 5 small staff meetings last week, 1 large staff meeting so far this week. And the staff meetings will continue because, again, as I have said many times in the past, we do have an amazing team here at Germantown Central, a team of people, no matter what their job description, dedicated to the children of our community and doing the very best that we can do with what we have. So you will see the Department of Health postings tomorrow, the revised plan, and a separate document that will have details about our remote model. As you're aware, there are 3 models that we were required to plan for. The in-person model, which kind of looks like school before COVID-19. Everybody comes to school here every day. The remote model, which kind of looks like school in March, April, May, and June of 2020, where all students were at home and many of our staff was at home as well. So everybody's remote. And then a hybrid model, which is a little bit of each. In our first rendition of our reopening plan, we indicated that we had set the goal to the highest possible place it could be. And that was to bring 100% of our students back to this school. And we have been planning on that all along. Over the last 2 weeks, the changes in the state, the changes in the country, the local changes, and opinions that were shared, as well as questions from both staff and our parents and guardians, have led us to believe that we will need to offer to parents both a choice, I should say, of either remote or in-person learning. We've examined this closely, and tomorrow, a lot of stuff is happening tomorrow, so hold on to your seats. Tomorrow, we are also going to generate a parent-guardian survey. We are going to ask you to turn that survey around to us by Monday. It consists of the child's name, the parent's name, and the answer to only 2 questions. The questions are, we are asking you to commit to either remote or in person separately for each of your children who are registered at this school and live in your household. And we are going to ask that you make that commitment for the entire first quarter or trimester. We are on a quarter-based system for grades 7 through 12 and trimester in the elementary grades, excuse me. We are following the lead of many other school districts. And the reason why we need to do this is because our planning, in fact, is a bit stuck. Thanks to all of you who responded to our first parent guardian survey and definitely gave us the data to know that there are some parents and guardians who are not going to send their children back, no matter how many plans we put in place. We hope that you will consider the plan very carefully prior to making your commitment. And the reason why we need to have a commitment is once we get the data from all of the parents, we will then design the in-person instruction based on those specific children, and we will design the remote instruction based on the remote children. That is very important in the secondary school where students take a variety of courses and electives, as you can imagine. It is also important in the elementary school, of course. It is important for meal planning. It is important for transportation, the single item that could stop us if 100% of the parents wanted to send their children. Transportation alone could easily put a stop to that. Once we get these numbers, we will design the first quarter or trimester, and parents will be asked within the survey tomorrow to give us a 2-week notice prior to making a change come second quarter or second trimester. Those dates will be sent out to parents again later as reminders. And there is also a statement noting that if extenuating circumstances arise for any individual child, we would, of course, look very carefully at that if a change needs to be made, and that would be done on a case-by-case basis. That is a huge change from the first rendition of our plan. It also is, in a way, a response to many of your concerns, and that will come to you tomorrow. The second piece is that now, because we are offering and hoping that parents will commit to one or the other, no longer do we have a 100% in-person program. So now what we have developed is a hybrid program. For that reason, you will see much more detail on what that hybrid program will look like in tomorrow's version of the plan. Another significant change from talking to staff, from talking to parents and guardians via the emails that have been submitted, and from meeting with other school districts, principals meet with principals, superintendents meet with superintendents, and we're meeting with Department of Health, as I had mentioned. All of these meetings occur, and the leadership team has made the decision that we are going to slow down the phase-in. 2 things, excuse me a minute while I admit these people. Two big ideas come into play here. First of all, I think we all are faced with the reality and likelihood that we could become fully remote if deemed necessary by the state, like it did in March. We know that that is a real possibility. We are working very hard to ensure that this fall's remote model is significantly improved, has a significant improvement over the Springs model. Not that the Springs model was bad, but we had about 24 hours to put it in place. This one, we've had some more prep time. And the teachers are all attending training and planning and brainstorming together of how we can do this better. So with that being said, we feel it is an important step to take to practice the remote learning 100% for a period of time at the beginning of the school year. This is a very significant change for all parents and guardians to be aware of. The way that is going to look is once again the same as the old plan, September, I keep messing up that date, September 8th through 11th, students will not be engaged in school because the staff and teaching, the staff and the teachers will be very busy in the building preparing for what is to come. And we are using all 4 superintendent conference days that week. There is a slight, there is one point I'd like to make about that. Students who are attending the Career Tech Ed or programs in buildings other than ours that begin that week will still have school that week. Only the students who attend at Germantown Central will not have school that week. Instead of beginning to phase in an in-person model the following week, we will move directly to a fully remote model. We anticipate that model to last 2 weeks, but know that during a worldwide pandemic, anything could happen to change that. For now, the plan that we're looking at is to have 2 weeks of fully remote. This way, students and faculty and staff will be able to troubleshoot our plan, find any flaws that need to be addressed, and tweak it to make sure at any point this year, if we need to, we can immediately transition to that plan. After the 2 weeks, we will then begin to transition students whose parents have committed to the in-person model to the in-person model. We will begin that with the very youngest of students, and we do that primarily because we will have the most adults available to assist with the training, with the information necessary, and basically with the orientation of those youngest children to their new program at Germantown Central School. We will then move from the youngest children all the way through to the oldest children, bringing in 2 to 3 grades each week. The plan is to have all of the students, and just so you know, I'm telling you all of this right up front, but between today and tomorrow when it comes out, you never know what might happen. We are constantly learning new things. As of right now, it looks like on October 19th, when the 9 through 12 students begin their in-person instruction, we will then be as full of in-person instruction as determined by parents who have made the choice. That is our new revised plan. Again, it will be documented on our website tomorrow for all of you to see, and all of the details that I couldn't possibly verbalize, and I certainly want to get to the remaining questions and spend a significant amount of time on that. So I told you about the survey. So the remote model document will be up as well so that you know way ahead of time what that looks like. The revised plan, the Department of Health documents, And the survey will come out via the robocall and email. Parents who do not respond to the survey because maybe they don't have the capability to receive it in that manner will be contacted via telephone or however we can contact folks. Also in the survey, which I'm not sure I mentioned, is a commitment to transportation. So what we're going to ask is if a parent is committing to in-person model, then if they, we're going to ask them for a second commitment regarding transportation. Designing transportation with approximately a third of the students we typically carry is in itself an entire project. Many of you have picked up on this, and I can tell that by the questions that were posed regarding buses, regarding checking in the morning, and leaving school in the afternoon, which will be discussed later. Once again, the goal of tonight is for the leadership team to respond to your questions as best as we can. It's not going to be perfect. In fact, nothing is going to be perfect, but we are going to work as hard as we can to get as close as we can. The first goal we made was to get 100% of the children back in the school. Although we truly feel that we have the capacity to do that, we are very aware that that is not what our community is asking for. So by making these changes tomorrow, you will, hopefully, folks will see that we are responding to our community's concerns, the concerns discussed by the reopened GCS team of 62, the faculty and staff. So I'm now going to move to respond to some questions which basically were not covered in those announcements. The first one I'm going to respond to is the one that most questions asked about, and that is masks. So you are likely aware that in our guiding assumptions, page 4, I have to tell you, to be honest, I was tempted to go through the plan with you, but I decided that the folks who took the time to read the plan and send us emails and questions and submit questions had already read it, and that we could best use the time to respond to your questions. So that's why the format is the way it is. Masks were the number 2 guiding assumption, and I will read just that. For in-person learning, all individuals will wear masks and maintain social distancing. Mask breaks, which is defined as the removal of a mask, may be taken in specific circumstances when social distancing of at least 6 feet is well established with little or no movement of individuals expected. Although originally the leadership team felt very strongly that we wanted to leave the wearing of masks, well, the wearing of masks is 100% what we're doing. So that is what we're doing for in-person learning. And by the way, it is for individuals, and that means every human in the building. So everyone will wear a mask. We will also thrive to achieve a 6-foot distance between people as much as we possibly can. I think the mask break seemed to be a huge question posed by our community. And a mask break, we feel now we need to elaborate on that statement. So please expect tomorrow in the newest rendition of our plan to contain additional information. And what we have said, what we're talking about now is some fundamental guidelines. Again, our neighboring districts work very closely with us. Many of them have pretty much traveled down this same road and determined that some fundamental guidelines need to occur. An example of fundamental guidelines is there is the obvious mask break, right? So folks have to eat. You cannot eat with a mask on. So the idea is to eliminate the movement expectation is everyone is prepared to sit for a period of time and eat their food without getting up. So once everyone in the room is seated and we have established that any last minute items have been taken care of, masks can be removed. That is a mask break. Another example of a mask break is probably the best place a mask break could ever happen. That's outside. So outside, but socially distanced of at least 6 feet, depending upon the activity occurring outside, is a great place for a teacher or another staff member who is in a supervisory capacity with a group of children to allow for a mask break. Mask breaks, first, we have to teach children what they are, and we have to teach them how they end, what causes them to end, where the masks go during the break. And we are working on all of those things. You probably saw in our plan the extensive amount of training that will occur with the children. Now, notice that by going to the remote scenario first, most of the training will be remote related to remote instruction. That's great because we can focus on that. But once the in-person begins, we will switch gears. And all students who are doing the in-person program will spend a significant amount of time on the health and safety training, which I would like to argue is legitimate health training for anyone. And in this world, the training is the proper thing to be doing under the subject area, if you will, of health education. So it is entirely appropriate to do that. So moving on about masks, there were several questions regarding the behavior of following the guidance of wearing a mask. Our code of conduct will deal with that as it does for any behavior at school. The code of conduct outlines expected behaviors. Students are required to abide by those behaviors. If they do not, consequences are assigned through a disciplinary process. So that will be handled in that manner. I think I covered pretty much everything about masks, like all of our protocols, the details about mask wearing and mask breaks is something that we're working on, but we still maintain, and parents and guardians need to know this when you're making your choice, that masks will be worn by all individuals and social distancing will occur, and that mask breaks absolutely will happen. My second topic is about drop-off and pickup. So in our first survey, we learned, although we were not surprised, that our parents and guardians are there to help us. For students who do qualify for bus transportation to school, a very large percentage of parents and guardians, and I'm sure it wasn't easy for them, figured out a way that they can get their child here. So we will now learn what those exact numbers and who those children are via the survey that is due on Monday. Necessary information. If every bus that could carry potentially 66 children can be filled to the new maximum, which is 22 children in most cases, and there are a couple things that can occur to change that. It would not change to a higher number. It would only change to a lower number. That would be 22 times 10, 220 students is the maximum amount that we can get here on a bus. I will say that there is no consideration at this point in time of a second bus run due to the very expensive cost for a bus run. That's at this time. As you are all aware, we are very, very much on the edge of our seats, waiting for any kind of announcements from the state or the federal government regarding school aid. And until we know that, it's not even a consideration to add extra bus runs. So once again, we're hoping our parents and guardians who wish to have their children here for the in-person instruction, which I should have mentioned is 5 days a week, every school day. And if they want to send their children here every school day, and if they can help us out with the transportation, we absolutely need it. So what that means is suddenly there's a drop-off point on the other side of the building on Main Street that has too many people at once. What we're looking at right now, and this is not going to be publicized tomorrow in a final form. We're going to continue working on this. We are looking at 2 drop-off times. That would also entail 2 pickup times. That would reduce the number of people on the Main Street side of the building dropping off and picking up children to half of the full amount that is not riding a bus. Again, until we get actual numbers, these are all theories of what our plan would be. Once we identify the 2 times, we hope to be able to give parents a choice, knowing full well that many of you have to drop off and pick up children around your work hours. We will strive to be able to give that choice. I cannot make that promise at this time. Drop off and pick off and drop off and bus travel will be happening on 2 different sides of the building. And for that reason, we will have 2 different health screening areas for students. The number 1 most important health screening that occurs for students occurs in the home. We will be posting and then sending home guidance for parents to use. We need parents to be the first person to look at a child every day, to follow the guidance and make a decision. If this child is sick in any way, the child needs to stay home. Notice that with our new program of hybrid, a child who stays home following the guidance of the New York State Health Department and the Columbia County Health Department can still engage in some manner with the remote program. Again, that is our dream. It is our goal. It is not literally hammered out yet. It is certainly not on paper, but by having this option, that helps us help you keep your children home if they are sick. The children whose parents have screened them and have determined the child does not meet any of the criteria where they must be kept home will then send them on the bus or drop them off. And those children will have their temperature taken at a temperature station with trained personnel who are wearing all PPE. That's personal protective PPE. What's the E?
Equipment.
Thank you. Sorry, lost that one. Personal protective equipment. And if at that point in time, the student is found to have not been a pass on the health screening, the parent will immediately be contacted. The student would go immediately to an isolation room, and the parent would need to pick that child up immediately. This is also all spelled out in the Columbia County Department of Health, at least the drafts I've seen so far, again, posted tomorrow. That will take some time, but we have looked at it carefully, and we feel that with all hands on deck of personnel to make that happen as quickly as possible, we are able to handle it if the students are coming in 3 groups. So the first drop-off period, the bus drop-off period, and then the second of the staggered drop-off period. Note that that will impact the amount of time that all students are in each of their classrooms. So the principals have gone back to the drawing board, and they are working with the entire staff to look carefully at how we can ensure that explicit instruction is not done during the period of students being brought in or being taken out of the building. That the plans are done in a way so that explicit instruction is in between those two periods, and that students do some of their work with the guidance of their teacher or with the guidance of other personnel in the beginning and the end of the day. My third item is the health screens, and I guess I somehow merged that into drop off and pickup. So I'm going to go on. We had a lot of questions about bathrooms. The bathroom plan that is presently in the reopened GCS plan is a great start. We've really made a great start. We looked at the equipment in the bathrooms. We have no-touch towels. We have a lot of sinks. We have a lot of toilets. We have a once we know the numbers of the children coming for in-person, we will then possibly revise that plan. When there's a bank of 4 sinks in a row, we will mark off to not use every other sink. We are looking at different methods of how a student going to a bathroom that is shared by multiple classes or multiple grades, how we can denote whether there is someone already in the bathroom or not, or if it's a very large room, if it's to capacity, a COVID capacity. We're looking at how we can do that easily. The plan is not done. Lots of folks asked questions about it. Of course, you noticed that all the answers are not there yet. It is a plan that we're working on. My next item, and then I'm going to turn it over to one of the leadership team. There were some questions about our HVAC systems. I'm going to give you my general response. First of all, we're very fortunate to have Paul Swighton, who is the Questar 3 Health and Safety Officer that we have here at Germantown Central. He has significant knowledge about this, and we also have a volunteer on our reopened GCS team who is an engineer and has significant knowledge about HVAC systems. In addition, we have the district's architect, and they have significant knowledge about HVAC systems. So the layman's terms that I would like to share is that we are going to make sure that all of our systems are circulating as much outside air as possible. There may have been reasons in the past why we were circulating inside air, but if the system is capable of circulating outside air, we will ensure that that is occurring. We will also, although we're very careful, and Jim can speak to this, we're very careful to ensure our systems have filters changed as necessary. It helps the life of the system. Now more than ever, we will keep very good records about filters being replaced so that these machines are working at an efficient capacity. And at this point in time, I want to invite Paul Swighton to give his 2 cents about our HVAC systems.
Well, we're going to follow all the recommendations from the state about fresh air. So we're going to put in as much fresh air as possible whenever possible. It's a little trickier in the winter, but we're going to take extra steps to do that. Jim's got a plan. He knows what he's doing. The systems, you're going to hear a lot on the TV and the news about upping the filter systems to MERVs and HEPA higher qualities. The problem with that is the systems are only engineered to handle a certain amount. So we will be able to increase filtration somewhat, but we can't bring it up to a HEPA level because the systems were never engineered to handle that in the first place. It would tax the system too much. We're compensating for that by increasing more fresh air. And that is right in line with the guidance of the governor, the State Department of Health, and the CDC and World Health Organization. So everything you said, Sue, is right on point. We're right there.
Jim, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, Paul pretty much said it in a nutshell. You know, a lot of the schools we're looking at is called MERV 13, but they can't utilize these filters because they're too tight of a filter for the units to handle. So, but no, Paul pretty much said it in a nutshell.
So in addition to ensuring that our HVAC systems are working in the best way and the recommended way, we are recommending that air conditioners be used. All of the classrooms that in-person instruction will occur in have air conditioners. We will have doors open. This is our older protocols did not include having doors open. In fact, we had doors closed. Now doors will be open, classroom doors, I mean to say, and also windows. Obviously, we can't always do that, but hopefully we can do it a lot. That is the recommendation, and that is our response to the HVAC questions. I'd like to jump back to masks for a quick minute. We had a wonderful recommendation today at our staff meeting. And the recommendation this person had seen where a school district asked that parents and guardians begin to practice and have their children start wearing masks. We know that many of you have had your children at home for a long period of time now. Most people that I know are not bringing their children to the grocery store or the drugstore or the gas station or wherever they're venturing out to. Children are not wearing masks in their homes. That makes sense, but they're going to need to learn how to wear masks at school. In fact, those of us who have worked in this building throughout this entire period of pandemic, in the beginning, struggled with the wearing of a mask. But I will tell, like so many things in life, you really do get used to it. You form habits, and we can help our children do this. In fact, I was saying earlier, when I decide I'm going to get up from my desk when I have the door shut, or like right now when there's nobody in the building but me, and as soon as I move my chair, my hand reaches out to grab my mask. It is absolutely automatic. I pop it on and off I go. So we can do that with our children. We have the brightest, most gifted children in the world. I can tell you that because I've been here long enough to see it. And they can learn anything. And in fact, they are going to impress us to no end. And on that note, I'm going to ask that Beverly Marr, our elementary principal, talk to you about some of the questions that as a leadership team, we felt were in her neck of the woods.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't believe how many have come on tonight. That says a lot about our community. And if I forget to say it or Jamie forgets to say it, please feel free to reach out to either of us if you have any questions whatsoever. It's a hard decision to make for some families, and there may be some things you're left wondering about. Feel free to give us a call. Hi, Jason, Annabelle, waving there. So yeah, just feel free to give us a call and reach out and ask those questions that might help inform your decision a little bit more. So this is a team effort, and we're just trying to give you all the information we can at this point to help you out. Sue had first mentioned about bringing back the youngest, and I just want to expand upon that a little bit. Principally, yes, we want to make sure that they are here, and so we have a lot of human resources to be able to help them out, right? To help them get from the bus to the health screening line, or from the drop off to the health screening line, get their lunches taken care of. We have a lot of hands on deck, and that was really super important. The other thing is we're in a different time than we were in the spring, right? So a lot of us were forced to be home with our jobs, but now a lot of us are needing to return to work, and we recognize that. Our youngest kids are not independent learners. We don't want their older siblings to have to be the ones to sit by them, or their grandparents or a babysitter, et cetera. So it was really important that we had our youngest children back into the school where we could make sure that they were safe and learning. And so I just wanted to make sure that you understood that was the principal reason why we're pushing so hard to have our younger kids in the building as much as possible. We also think back to February, if you can, pre-COVID days, and never could we have imagined ever that we would have done what we did in the spring. It would have been unfathomable to think of that we could remote teach to our whole district of kids, and we did it. And I'm not saying we did it perfect or even excellent, But it's amazing the amount of learning that families did and that our teachers did. And we were actually able to roll into this. And so when we think about the fall and bringing back kids in this situation or remote learning, we almost kind of go to the same place in our mind, don't we? That it's almost hard to fathom what this will look like when you have kids physically distanced in their classrooms, where they can't necessarily be switching classes. And that's hard to fathom, just like the spring was. But I know that, and I just want to assure everybody, our staff and our faculty are working so hard right now as we speak. They are invested in their own learning. They are joining with other professional organizations to find out what other schools across the nation and in New York State are doing. They are taking these great online courses with Questar over the summer. We have a professional learning site on our own website that the staff is utilizing to understand how to use some of this online work. So they're investing their time to figure out, how do we make this engaging for our kids in the classroom? And how do we get them to learn and to socialize? It just looks different. But I know, and I feel absolutely assured that they will succeed just like we did in the spring. So I just want to kind of put that out there, that that work is being done and our teachers are working hard already throughout the summer for that. A lot of training is going on, and that training will continue throughout the whole year. It won't stop the minute our kids hit the building. It will continue on a weekly basis. Jamie and I are building into the schedules time for that professional learning for our teams on a daily and a weekly basis. There's a lot of collaborative time being set aside because that piece is going to be critically important, and a lot of training on the kids. The social emotional learning also is a big aspect to next year. It's the number one thing we're concerned about as far as the health and safety of our kids when they come back. We want to make sure that we train our staff well on how do we recognize trauma in our students and how do we engage and respond accordingly. We've had some questions from parents worried that we may not be able to give care and comfort to our children because of the social distancing. And I need to assure you that we have all of the protocol in place to allow that to happen. We will respond like we have in the past. If a child is upset or crying, or if they're having any personal difficulties, we will attend to it. We have all of the PPE that we need to safely do that. And so we will continue to make sure we address the social and emotional concerns of all of the kids every day, regardless of the age. So that is an important key piece for all of us to be aware of. To begin with some of the questions that we had, somebody had asked about, for our youngest kids, is it possible to have half days because they felt that may be too long for them to be in school? Transportation precludes that possibility. So we are having the full days, and the 3 days a week, we was a question if we could bring kids back 3 days a week, and we have made the decision for elementary to bring them back the 5 days a week for all of the reasons we had mentioned at the onset. The other question was for remote learners, can there be flexibility in the schedule, and do they need to be present on the computer during regular school hours? Both the high school and the elementary school will be addressing attendance and make that very clear in our policy that attendance will be taken on a daily basis. If families do have concerns about students who are remote learners being able to actively participate during certain times, you can address that with the building principals, and we'll take care of that for you. And we'll figure out a situation that works for everybody. The important thing is to have your students engaged in learning on a daily basis. A big question was about, for our early elementary, what will that look like? What will the day look like? What will the schedules look like? So again, you heard Sue talk about the morning time, which is a great opportunity for the elementary building specifically. We're planning on using that first hour in the morning to do things like morning meetings and team building and social emotional curriculum, where we can address those issues. We can have students kind of start the day in a quiet way with some silent reading or some read alouds. So we're looking at that as a big opportunity to be able to start the day in a slower, calmer pace. As we go through the day, it will look much like it would have in a normal school year, in that we will have art. We will offer all of our specials, art and music, PE. We're going to try to be outside as much as we can. We are looking at buying yoga mats for all of our kids, which are naturally 6 feet in length and are naturally social distancers, so that they can take them outside and sit in a group, or they can go outside and do some art on their yoga mat, or go outside and sing and do music and great things with their yoga mats. Also in the classroom too, they could be used to sit beside their desk and to lay down to read a book, or to draw, or to color, or anything like that. There are so many ways that we're making recess engaging. And, you know, when we looked at these ideas on how do we make recess fun, it goes back to when we were kids, right? Red light, green light, the games like this, freeze tag, like all these things we used to do as kids. These are great social distance games that we can play. And there's a lot of activities, kickball, all these different things we can engage kids in. Again, it's just a matter of finding these resources, becoming aware, and putting them into our situation. Question has come up about the playgrounds, and initially, again, we're starting with the kind of the tightest situation possible. They will be restricted for the initial opening until we better understand how to work that into our safety protocol. But I would anticipate that we would be opening the playground initially for our youngest children as soon as we possibly can and get that open. But our goal is to get kids out in the fresh air as much as possible, and where they can safely physically distance and engage in some activity. The questions come up about kindergarten and pre-K specifically. Will my child have to sit in a desk all day? And the answer to that is absolutely no. There are some great partnership activities we can do. They can do problem solving together. They can work with like cups to see who can stack the highest cup stack. And they can do all of these different things. They're just different than they'd looked before. And so our pre-K and K teachers are heavily working on coming up with those fun activities that are engaging, that encourage teamwork, and allow social distancing at the same time. So please know we are working so hard on that. Pre-K will still have their nap time, they'll have their snack time in the room, lunch will be in the room, and again, we'll just have people coming into the room to support much of the learning. So actually, your kids will probably have much more attention than they've had in the past as far as resources or human resources to work with them. So we're anticipating it'll be a very strong year for them. The last question I think we may have had for the elementary was about the hours and picking up students early. And, you know, certainly there will be circumstances, as in any year, where we need to pick up our children early or bring them into school late, and that will still be the case. But we ask that it not be on a daily basis. And the GAP program also too is planning to be available for our children in a more limited format as far as numbers, but it will be available after school with the same hours that it had been in the past. So that GAP program will be available. And I think somebody has asked about toys and what will they look like. And I would say we will be providing almost kits, personal kits that can be made up for kids of toys. It could be Legos or Polly Pockets or whatever those small toys are that a student could hang on to for that week. And the same thing with books. We have a wonderful online library system called Sora, where a student can go and choose their book and the librarian can then deliver it to their classroom. I anticipate that students would have a set of books that they can own for the week or so, and then when they're done, turn them back in, we'll clean them, and then they can get a new set of books. So the library itself will be off limits, obviously, but we will still make sure that kids have access to tons and tons of books. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Marr. I'm now going to move on to Jamie Didonna, Junior Senior High School Principal.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to our first town meeting. It's great to see the big turnout and all the great questions that were submitted to the committees. Only by working together are we going to get through this. And I really want to stress that this is a community issue. This is a community, and we have a great community here in Germantown. And when we talk about mask wearing and we talk about the rules that we have to put in place, it's for everybody's safety. It's so everybody can come to school safely, can learn in a safe environment, and it only happens if we all work together. It is so important that if you have a question, that you reach out to Ms. Mayer or myself. We are always available. We return phone calls and emails right away. And we have been doing a lot of that this summer, and we enjoy doing that because this is why we're in this profession. We're in this profession because we love the kids. We love them coming in. We love education. And we really want to work with the parents and the guardians to get through this, because it will end someday and we will get back to normal someday. But in the meantime, it's very, very, very important that we work together. So I just wanted to stress that. And that's how we feel as a team at Germantown, the leadership team and everyone involved, the teachers and the secretaries and the custodians. We're all working together to try to open school up this year. We want to come back to school. That being said, I wanted to address a couple different areas that I felt pertain to the high school. And they're little, but they came up over and over. The one thing was, we will not be using lockers to start the school year. Lockers will be kept locked, no supplies in there. Students will be allowed to bring backpacks into school. We will change that rule during this pandemic and allow kids to have their backpack with them, walk in the halls if they need to change classes with them at all times. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that rule. Although it is for safety, we felt that the health and safety of the school definitely needed to have backpacks with them so they could carry their things. That being said, supplies will be a lot less moving forward. We will not need as many textbooks. Every student has an iPad. Every student is going to be educated in the Teams platform, which we used in the spring. We're going to do more professional development, not only with the teachers, but with the students and with the parents. We are putting together videos that will be available at the beginning of September for parents to look at, so parents understand the routines, students understand the routines, and it is very important that we not only educate ourselves, but we educate everybody else about what we're doing and how we're delivering our education. We are phasing in. There is going to be a certain amount of time where we are 100% remote until we can move back into the classroom. So we want to make sure we're giving quality education. Teachers have been working on delivering that, and we will make sure that students understand it and parents understand it, because we felt it's very important that we have everybody on board when we start. Sports. Right now, New York State Physical Educator, NISFA, I'm sorry, I don't know the whole acronym, but right now it's scheduled to begin September 21st. That being said, it's a week by week, and those decisions, I assume, will be changing week by week with sports. We want kids to have sports. We want them here. Some kids, that's why they come. They love it. It's socialization. It's competition. It's good for young people. We really, really want to get sports back, but that decision is being driven by the state ed department and specifically by the phys ed department. And Ms. Putney could probably correct me on that, but there is an organization that determines whether we can do sports or not.
You're right on there, Jamie. As of right now, September 21st is the start date. They delayed the start date. Over the next couple weeks, I know that NISVA has been meeting with New York State Ed, and then they will in turn meet with the state will meet with all the sections, and then the sections will in turn be meeting as an executive team, and then with the presidents of the league. So it's a hierarchy coming down very soon.
Thank you, Tina. The other thing I wanted to address was chorus and band. We will still continue to give chorus voice lessons, band lessons. Band and chorus will look a little different to start the year. It may be more small group ensembles while we transition into a phase into in school. Once we get in school, there is a 12-foot distance that students need to respect, or that is brought to us by the state. We are working very closely with Mr. Gallagher and Ms. Chaika about how to tackle that problem. Many times it'll be outside. Many times it'll be smaller ensembles that can fit into our new chorus room, which will be in the new building, which Ms. Brown didn't say, but is coming up, and she's doing a great job getting that. And hopefully it'll be finished this fall for us to use. and we're very excited about that. So sports, as far as chorus and band, we are going to definitely deliver that type of instruction. It just might look a little bit different to start the year, but we are working. Mr. Gallagher and Ms. Chaika, again, have been working very hard to come up with ideas to keep that engaging. The last thing I just wanted to reiterate is the masks and the discipline. We're not about worrying about the discipline. We're worrying about keeping everybody safe. That's why it's so important that all the students know that it's not about whether we believe it or we don't believe that this is occurring. The fact is we have to keep everyone safe, not only physically, but mentally. That social emotional learning is so important when we start to school. This has been a traumatic event for everyone involved, especially children. And we want to make sure that when students come back to school, they feel safe. And so we're asking parents to really understand that our position is to make sure everybody feels safe, regardless of our personal feelings. It's a public school and we have to keep the public safe. I don't foresee a lot of problems in Germantown. This is a great community. We work together very well. The kids are fantastic. I love the kids. And they're very reasonable, and I hope everybody understands that it's not because we want to do this, it's because we have to do this, and this is what's coming down from the governor. So please understand, none of this is anybody's fault. It's nobody's, these decisions are being made for the good of the community, and only with your support and only by working together are we going to get through this, and we will get through this, and I promise it will end someday. It will. So. Thank you, and please feel free to reach out to me. My email, call me, I'll return calls, I return emails right away, and I would love to hear from anybody that has any ideas about coming back to school and phasing in. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. DiDonna. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Yvonne Waters. She is our Director of Special Education and Pupil Personnel Services, and she facilitated the focus group on special education and English language learners, which were, that was quite a project to look at students with special needs and how we can meet the needs of our students. So go ahead, Mrs. Waters.
Thank you, Sue. Good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see this wonderful turnout. It's hard to say the same things both Jamie and Bev have already said, but I would say ditto to every one of them. Much appreciation to the folks who joined me on the team that I spearheaded with regard to our volunteers. They were wonderful. They had great, great input, great questions, great thoughts. They're a great team to work with. It's been a sheer pleasure, and I look forward to continuing to work with them. Before I get started, I'm working on or answering the questions with regard to supervision, attendance, and PPE, which is what I will be speaking to this evening. I do want to say that one thing, and this has been a question that continually is seemingly to come up, not necessarily in the questions that have come into our emails, but from families, from staff, and that is with regard to students with special needs, 504 accommodation plans, ENL, and McKinney-Vento. Those students will follow the same phase-in plan that Mrs. Brown outlined and will be posted on Friday. So while the guidance suggested that it was best to have those students in school every day, again, we feel as a leadership team and as a community that their safety is just as important as anybody else's and will be treated as the same as any student in our district. So know that. If you happen to have a student who has an IEP or a plan that calls to be out of district and they are starting school in a different way, they will start when that placement starts. So just know that, okay? So with regard to the areas that I am talking about, one of the questions that came up had to do with supervision. And it had to do with supervision with children moving in the hallways and going to restrooms, etc. And that really we have to make real solid plans around. We will have directionality signs and markers in the hallways that show where students are to be and their distances, etc. We're looking at avenues of helping our younger ones know what 6 feet apart is when they're in the hallways and who is actually going to be supervising them. And a lot of that stems upon what you as a community and what you as parents choose, whether or not your children will be in person. So that is a work in progress. We will absolutely do our very best with the data that we receive from you folks, and we will adjust that as we go. As far as attendance, we have spoken about attendance. Mrs. Marr and Mr. Dodonna had mentioned that yes, attendance will be taken daily. In our reopening plan on page 20, it does talk about our attendance plan, and that we are working with our Chief Information Officer and working along with our eSchool data system, which is our student management system, to keep track of that attendance and participation, both in remote learning and in in-person learning. As far as the policy, we have always had an attendance policy. Attendance is very important to learning, obviously. And you know that in our current attendance policy, that there are situations that are reviewed and considered in how we address that. For instance, somebody gets sick and they're out of school for a fair amount of time. Or somebody isn't deemed able to come into school because they have a fever or they have a runny nose or whatever that case may be, and that the expectation would be that those students would get their work and hopefully, as Mrs. Brown said, go into remote learning and continue their learning. With regard to PPE, the one big question seemed to be about whether or not we did have the amount of PPE, personal protective equipment, Sue, I remembered the word, in-house. And we do have a stockpile, and it has been coming in continually, and it includes our face masks, our face shields, our gowns, our gloves. We also have other equipment on order that will be protective for the building administrators, the clerical staff, and the teachers with regard to those barriers around their desks, if they choose to have that on their desk. So those are all on order and they are all coming in. The face shields, there were some questions about those face shields. They are primarily worn by adults, and they are primarily worn by adults who may have a situation like Mrs. Marr talked about, where they have to comfort a child or deal with a child who is sick. That additional PPE is there for the person who is assisting that child and is provided by the district. Are face shields disposable or reusable? Yes, the face shields are reusable and are cleanable. And again, they are primarily used by the adults. I think I have covered all of those primary questions with regard to specifics about whether or not we have the items in district, if those face masks are usable, and if the teachers have the protective equipment. That's pretty much all from my end. So thank you very much.
So I would like to, before I move to Mr. Palmieri, to see if he would like to add anything, I just want to mention there is a statement in the plan which is going to come out of the plan. Early on, we had talked about students using face masks and, face shields. I want to clarify that a face shield is used in conjunction with a face mask. It is not and does not replace the use of a face mask. So that's my first clarification. My second clarification is the statement about children using them. That is, it is unlikely in most situations that children would use a face shield. I'd also like to mention about masks the expectation is that parents or guardians supply the mask for the children, and that the employer, being the district, supply masks for employees. But we absolutely have ordered and have a stockpile of student masks because we realize that a mask could be forgotten somehow, could break, or could become soiled during the school day. So of course, we have also stockpiled student masks to replace any if there's any kind of a problem. Before I move on, Paul, did you have anything you wanted to add about masks or shields?
I'll only add about the shields. Originally, months ago, the shields were okay, and the reason we're taking them out now is because the state guidance has changed on it. So it's part of that constantly changing plan. As the guidance evolves, we make the adjustments, which is why we're making the adjustment now. But
Thank
nope, you got it all perfect.
Thank you. And then I would just like to invite Jim, Paul, Mary, did we forget anything that you feel is important to share with our community?
No, I mean, I think we're hitting all the important areas, and it's kind of a, this is a great thing that we're doing here. We're just bringing it out into the open and discussing it, and I think everything is great so far.
Okay, so I want everyone to know that, once again, this is being recorded. Some questions have been posed in the chat, and if we have time, we will look at some. But if we do not have time, I will capture the chat questions, and they will be responded to in our next community panel discussion, along with any emails that we receive. And thank you so much for using that specific email address. It's really, really helpful. I was just nervous that emails from parents could possibly end up in my junk mail or be screened out of my regular email. So please continue to use that. I'd like to make a quick comment about classrooms. So we have removed a lot of things from the classrooms. I think most of our parents and guardians, unless you're the parent of a pre-K student or a new family in our district, have seen what our classrooms look like. And we do have a lot of stuff, and it is very fun stuff. But what we have decided is to ensure that the social distancing is pretty much easy to define, easy for everyone. There is no miscommunication. Oh, well, that's my spot. Well, no, this is your spot. It's going to be very obvious. We have removed all the stuff, and there's more stuff the younger you go, to a separate location. We didn't get rid of it. It's still here. And I love the way Mrs. Marr described that a teacher will be able to go to the place where all the materials are, select items, assign them to students, and students can hang on to those items for any period of time. Some teachers might say, well, this is something, everyone's going to have these items for 1 week. And then we'll do the cleaning, we'll put them back, and we'll assign them new things. But another teacher might say, well, gee, this is a manipulative, maybe a math manipulative, and I can divvy these up a section for each child, and they might use them for a full month while we're doing a math, some math lessons where manipulatives are easy to use. In fact, I know that we have doled some of these items out last spring so that students could use them in their learning remotely. So any ideas that you have, I know our teachers are just so creative. They can ask parents, can go get the checkers out. We need all the red checkers in this pile and all the black checkers in this pile. And now we have math manipulatives. We have a very creative and talented staff. I know I don't have to tell you that. That is very obvious. And we are going to make learning fun, whether you are home because your parents have chosen that you are going to use the remote model for the first quarter or trimester, or if you decide to commit to sending your child to the in-person model. It will be fun. It will be engaging. Children will have other children around them in the in-person model that they can communicate with, they can talk about the book they just read, and we can figure out how kiddos can collaborate, but not necessarily be within the 6 feet that we would like to establish between them. I think that it can be done. We have a lot of talent working on it. So at this point in time, I invite you again, continue to submit your questions. Please look at all the new postings that will go up tomorrow. At least by the end of the day, there should be a lot. It'll give you some weekend reading. I'm sure you'll have new questions. Every time guidance changes in our plan will happen. But every time we talk with our community and with our very talented staff, we will also make adjustments. We are not going to give up on making this better. It will continue to be better and better. And one more additional piece. To those wonderful 62 volunteers who have spent so many hours planning with us, we're not going to stop, because just because school opens doesn't mean we're done. We know changes will still occur, updates will still be needed, so we will continue to meet as a group to address those things. We only have 10 minutes left, but I'm going to just peek into the chat and see if there's anything that we could respond to quickly.
Sue, can I just jump in? I realized I
Oh,
did forget
please.
a question. Yep. So
Absolutely.
Cindy had asked about orientation
Oh.
for new students or pre-K. I'm sorry, I forgot that question. So we're working on that because we're trying to figure out what that looks like with visitors coming into the building, et cetera. So please know, we will be putting some form of orientation together because it's really important that that comfort is there for both your child and the family as well. But we will definitely be providing family orientations into the summers very soon, and maybe a series of them as well. So once we have more information on that, we will certainly notify you of that.
Okay, so I'd like to just add something to that as well. We are looking at a model right now. As you know, in the elementary, we've had grade level night for many, many years. In most school districts, it's referred to as open house. This was the year before the pandemic that the junior senior high was looking at a similar activity. I don't know how far they've gotten on that, but we are going to continue to look at this orientation. As Mrs. Marr said, highly necessary for any students new to our district or any families new to our district, but also necessary for families whose children are in a different grade and may or may not be familiar with that grade's procedures and protocols and curriculum. So we are looking at how we can create an orientation of sorts that families can engage in, maybe digitally. And I'm talking about the grade level night now. So if your child is going into a new grade in the elementary, instead of coming to the school, as you are aware, we will not be doing large group gatherings and we are not having visitors. It would be an activity where you would engage with your child's teachers for this upcoming year in a similar manner, but digitally, maybe a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, and you will be invited to it. And we're hoping to get to include, this is a goal, it is not happening yet, maybe a video of the classroom. We know that parents are struggling to envision what we get to walk down the hall and physically work on and set up. And we have our vision of what those rooms are going to look like. And if we can videotape them and maybe walk you through it, or maybe walk you through what it looks like to get off a bus and to go to the S-shaped line and to wait 6 feet apart from everyone and to have your temperature taken and to have the children see it too, because the individual taking the temperature will be wearing the additional PPE we mentioned earlier. And that is a state and a state Department of Health recommendation, actually requirement, I should say. So we want the children to see what that looks like and not, be surprised, so that they have some kind of expectation prior to showing up for in-person. I also want to say that I think it's very difficult for families to make this commitment at this time. But if you've ever heard of the chicken or the egg, which comes first? That is our conundrum. Is it the chicken or is it the egg? We cannot design the program without the numbers. And it is very difficult for you to make the commitment. We ask that you take the time to read all of the new postings that will go up tomorrow. Make the best decision you can. There was a question in the chat box about a student coming to school and then not being comfortable. As we had stated, we will absolutely, on a case-by-case basis, look at any situation that arises that might require a change. If we can make the change, we will make it. But we really are asking for the commitment for the entirety of the first trimester for grades pre-K to 6 and for the first quarter for grades 7 through 12. So please help us out with that by submitting the survey before the end of the day on Monday so that we can get to work and figure out the big puzzle of transportation and what each classroom will look like. And then we will be able to issue soon after, we hope, who your child's teacher will be next year. Another thing, we're all on the edge of our seats. You think you are, imagine how the teachers feel. We all want to know that, and we have to move forward. And we are in a worldwide pandemic. We have to first and foremost keep ourselves safe and healthy, and secondarily, figure this out so that our children can come back to school. I'm going to capture everything in the chat. We will meet again next week and respond to tonight's chats. We will also respond to any emails that are sent. And if you're not comfortable with email, there is a phone number. You can call Linda Anderson. We'll actually listen to your question and type it into the email so that it goes to the correct place. I cannot thank you enough for everything. Just taking the time out to be with us tonight, and the feedback that we anticipate receiving is hugely important to the leadership team, as well as the reopened GCS volunteers. I thank you so much. I wish you to be well and safe and happy, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye, everybody.